Welcome to the New York Alternative Investment Roundtable's lunchtime webinar series. My name is Jason Eisman, Assistant Vice President at Hub International and moderator for this webinar. I had the chance to catch up with our presenter ahead of the call and hear a sneak preview of what he's going to be presenting today. And I can tell you in no uncertain terms, I am extremely excited and I hope that you guys are too. A few housekeeping items before I introduce our presenter. First, if you're new to the Roundtable or unfamiliar with the organization, we're a nonprofit whose mission is to provide a forum for thought leadership and knowledge sharing in the alternative investments industry. We do this by hosting monthly in-person events in New York City and monthly educational webinars such as this one. A special thank you to our sponsors. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do everything that we do and work towards achieving our mission. If you're interested in becoming a member or learning more about membership and sponsorship for your firm, please connect with me on LinkedIn or go to the website ny-alt.org to learn more. Last but not least, this is a webinar that will be recorded and posted to the Roundtable's website afterwards. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat and our presenter will try to address them as they come in. Otherwise, questions will be addressed at the end during a Q&A, time permitting. That said, I'd like to introduce everybody to Matthias Knab, founder and CEO of Opalesque, senior advisor at Castle Hill and Greenwich Economic Forum. With that, Matthias, take it away.
Right. Thank you, Jason. Thanks a lot. So you see where I am. This is wood. I'm actually in a Swiss mountain hotel for a family office conference. I'm joining a panel tomorrow. Guess about what? About fake family offices. Okay, so welcome everyone. We are going to talk about fake family offices and particularly this guy, Anthony Ritossa. I assume some of you are curious. What's the story with this guy? I'm seeing all these conferences, but I heard something isn't quite right, right? It just doesn't add up. So we'll look into this just as a case study of social engineering. Please, Jason mentioned the chat, right? So let's just really test the chat. So if you know me, if we have crossed our paths, maybe just send me a quick message. Also, if you would like this presentation, because there will be a couple of slides, I need to be really, really quick, but you might want to have the slide, leave me a message in the chat, just say me or whatever, and we'll make sure to send it to you. So far, everybody wanted the presentation who heard it, right? So we're going to race through it. We're going to start with Ritossa, the family office that came out of nowhere. This is the Ritossa business card. This is a photo of his real business card, and I want to show you two things here. First, this Sir, okay, Sir Anthony Ritossa, which is fake, right? Total invention, right? And then look at this logo, right? Some of you may recognize this logo, and we'll come to that later. So who is this guy, Sir Anthony Ritossa, right? So there was a Vanity Fair investigation that came out in October 2022. And interestingly, Ritossa didn't take any action against Vanity Fair because, I was also a contributor to that article. So I went through the entire verification process. Vanity Fair, they have a double layer verification process, and anything they write, they have proof for, right? So turns out he's a Wall Street washout, a world-class con man, and an inveterate fabulist with a bogus CV, right? This is actually the winged lion of the Venice St. Mark's Basilica, right? So this is one of the main buildings, the holy building of all Italians in Venice. And here you see the winged lion, which he took for his business card, right? He also claimed to be stemming from a 600-year family office, right? So all of that is out there in the public domain, hosted by the 600-year-old Ritossa family office. Then there's another thing where he talks about a family office dating back 600 years to the Venetian Empire. Okay, here you go, Venice. Okay, so 600 years. Let's think about that. How long have the Rothschilds been around, right? I think around 300 years. So that's basically double the Rothschilds, just to be safe, probably. And what does a fake family office need? Of course, a fake family office needs to have a fake chief investment officer. So this guy, Frederick Faber, and I'm calling them out, right? Because he's still running around at conferences with his fake history and even today pretending to be a family office, which of course he is not, right? So then you may think, but what about this Ritossa olive oil? Didn't it all get started? Didn't he make his money with olive oil? Well, here you see again the distillation of 600 years of history, etc. Prequin writes about it. Ritossa Olive Oil and Family Office is the single family office of the Ritossa family and the Ritossa Olive Oil Company. And at some point, I thought something just doesn't add up. The guy behaves weirdly. I want to look into this. And I was Googling around Ritossa olive oil, and I found this is called a lading bill. So when you ship a crate or something from one port to the other, it is documented and you can find these things on the internet. So there was this, he actually shipped at one point 2,500 kilograms of olive oil from, and now it gets interesting, from Poreč, Croatia, okay, to New York. And it says manufacturer shipper MIH Poreč. This is Croatia. Now we have a saying in German, Inspector Coincidence. Okay, Inspector Coincidence was basically hitting hard. Uh, how did this happen? I happened to be married to a Macedonian wife. And my wife, she was born in, yeah, I'm gonna say it, right, in the 70s when they still had the Yugoslav Republic. And at that time, everybody spoke everybody else's language. So the Macedonians, they spoke Croatian, they spoke Serbian, they spoke Bulgarian. And because she had a Russian piano teacher, she also ended up speaking Russian, etc. So she speaks with German and English, 6 languages. And I said, let's call this cooperative and find out what's the deal with this olive oil, right? Because it just didn't add up. I don't believe the story, okay? So we called the guy and we heard that Ritossa basically doesn't own a single olive tree. So the guy said, we talked to the director of the cooperative. He said, look, I'm buying the olives on the market. I'm the guy who bottles and labels them and I ship them. And by the way, he still owes me money. And by the way, the last thing I heard was the police is looking for him, for Ritossa. Okay. Then you may think, okay, but isn't his father rich, right? And that's also what I originally thought, because I know Ritossa since 2004, 2005, when he was working at Deutsche Bank, Memori Barclays Bank. He was a so-called hedge fund sales guy at conferences selling structured products and solutions to hedge funds, and that's how we met. And so I thought, well, it can't be him, but maybe it's the father. So the Vanity Fair article came out. I'm featured in the Vanity Fair article. A lot of people reached out to me and said, well, Matthias, great job with this Vanity Fair article. Let me tell you my Ritossa story. You have no idea how many Ritossa stories I've heard, right? So this lady, she reached out by a LinkedIn message, right? And she was from Sydney, Australia, where Ritossa and his family is from. And so I asked her, right, isn't his father in real estate or something, right? Or he was using a bricklayer, could be a euphemism for a developer. And look what she said. No, 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 no. He drove a taxi which he owned, right? It was immaculate. He would be turning in his grave over the Vanity Fair piece. So let me see what's going on in the chat. Who has read the Vanity Fair piece, right? Hi there, right? Who has read Vanity Fair piece? Let me just see if this works, right? And break the ice, right? I want to enable you also to not be afraid. If you have any questions, put it in the chat. Okay, back to Robin. Okay, no. Um, he drove a taxi, no real estate. Okay. But then you may think, okay, um, but hey, on these great conferences. So, right, this is from the Vanity Fair article. We basically had zero investors at these events. A long time Ritossa member admitted. Well, Ritossa has bullshitted thousands of people. In my case, I lost a lot of money, right? So this was a former sponsor. Okay. Have we ever received investment from any of the people attending Ritossa events? No, right? Okay. He's just a simple guy that has found a way to put people together, a lot of people, or is one of the greatest scam artists in the world. Okay, you decide. How do you call this? You know, you know, we might call this fraud, right? What's actually the definition of fraud? Deceit, trickery, intentional perversion of truth in order to induce another to part with something of value or surrender a legal right. Hey, he's now selling his sponsorship for 200,000 euros. The act of deceiving, of misrepresenting, right, to trick. One who defrauds, cheat. Okay. And now I want to spend some time here, right? Because now we go into the broader picture, social engineering. Okay, the core characteristic of social engineering attacks is the lie of a false identity. Okay, the lie of a false identity when it comes to social engineering. And this is Ritossa's wife. Okay, and what do we see here? Okay, it's really, really interesting. So you see, there's the CEO magazine, and it has Sir Ritossa, Fake Sir, featured. Now you can buy a profile article, right, in these types of media, okay? And then very elegantly, Sir Ritossa is framed by Indra Nui, okay? She is, as you might know, right, the chairman and former chief executive officer of PepsiCo from 2006 to 2018. She basically boosted revenue by 80% and is always ranked as one of the 100 most powerful women in business, right? And the other lady is, of course, Serena Williams, the greatest of all times in tennis. And you see Ritossa in the middle, okay? Social engineering, right? So you create your status by proximity or by association. Okay, next. Here. Here you see Anthony Ritossa. He got, now I looked him up, he's now at 75,000 followers, right? So the social engineering is still ongoing, right? And look, well, I'm going to say that later because somebody contacted me recently and said, look, he has a book out now. So I looked into this book and it's only 22 pages. And again, he is coming up with this Nobel Prize nomination. So I'm going to read you something from a magazine. This article is available only in Norwegian and it is behind the paywall. This is Norway's leading business paper. And when a Norwegian princess showed up at the Ritossa event, that princess got into trouble. And the journalist contacted me and he gave me the article. I have it in the English translation. And so back to this Nobel Prize nomination. DN, Dagens Næringsliv, so this magazine, right? He writes, the N is sitting on court documents showing that in 2018, Ritossa's mother changed her will and disinherited Ritossa. Okay, that's just a side notice. The N also has a letter from an academic from Central Europe. So, quoting from the letter, Anthony Ritossa came to me in 2012, completely broke, and asked if I could help him with his business. He came on a borrowed bike. The result of our collaboration was the conferences, writes the academic who remains unnamed. The letter continues. Anthony nominated himself for the Nobel Peace Prize and nominated me as the nominator because I am employed by an institution that can nominate. He informed me of this only later. So he was using this guy's name to nominate himself, right, for the Peace Nobel Prize. So, okay. So this is quite interesting. So again, the lie of a false identity, fabricated titles, fabricated wealth, fabricated family history. We got legal troubles and all of that. Okay. So what's also interesting, a lady from New York actually contacted me and said, "Oh, Matthias, you don't believe that. There's a guy called Norman Martin who contacted me and selling sponsorship for Ritossa events." So this Norman Martin is a convicted stock fraudster, right? So he was in 96 involved with was back then the largest stock fraud arrest in US history. Okay. So these are the types of people, right, who work with Ritossa and similar fraudsters. Now, you may think, but what about all those names, right? So there is this distinguished Grand Ambassador and Summit Chairman of the 19th Ritossa Family Office Summit in Monaco. And HRH, His Royal Highness, Prince Michel de Yugoslavie, grandson of King Umberto of Italy and Prince Paul of Yugoslavia, okay, resident of Monaco, acting as a chairman for a Ritossa conference. So you may think, oh, dude, this is interesting. I'm going to meet a real prince. But of course, there is no aristocracy anymore in Yugoslavia. It was all abandoned. This Prince Paul, he was basically tossed out in 42 already because he started to make deals with Hitler. And yeah, and Prince Michel, he's a photographer. Okay. And not only that, if you read Harry Markopoulos, No One Would Listen. Markopoulos is the guy who basically proved to the SEC that Madoff was a fraud. If you look at his book, you will actually learn that this guy, Prince Michel, was involved with marketing Madoff. Okay. Also interesting. So it's not all that glitters, right? So just a little bit the social engineering. Okay. So then Ritossa is basically calling out the scammer. So you see it's a scammer calling out the scammer. But let's also look at who is attending those summits. Okay. This is a message I got recently in January. On Friday, I finally got back some of my investments, minus inflation, minus legal fees, minus bank transfers, etc., after 5 years from someone who headlined a Ritossa family office summit. Okay, you see fake private equity firms who are in this orbit and really not good. You see a lot of people who are running around as fake family offices, promising fund managers and entrepreneurs to basically invest, to introduce them to other investors. But this is a scheme, right? So they will charge a due diligence or a platform fee. They demand a percentage of your raise before committing, but they offer interest, but only if you pay, right? So this is a whole industry. And of course, you can really identify them um, by applying a radar, right, that you find in my script here, right? So what happened with Ritossa? Now he's back. He rebooted his events, right? So first he waited 2 years, then he is deflecting the Vanity Fair article. Oh, nothing true, all invented, nothing true, it's all invented. But he didn't get into any legal argument with Vanity Fair, right? So he rebranded the whole thing to the Global Family Office Summit, initially kept his name out. When it was clear that he was acting behind the scenes, he put his name back in. He re-engaged with former supporters. He's bribing VIP names with first class flights and hotels, and of course, massive social engineering and stunning locations. So this is a book I'm really recommending everyone to read, The Confidence Game, and look at the subtitle, Why We Fall for It Every Time by Maria Konnikova. Okay, The Confidence Game. What are some of the key takeaways, right? The key premise here is everyone is vulnerable. And again, this comes up more and more at family office conferences. I gave the same talk, the same presentation to a group of Asian family offices. While I was presenting, the moderator put up a poll. Who of you has already been defrauded, right? And it was 40% who admitted that they had been defrauded, right, by fake by fakes and fraudsters and con artists. So everyone is vulnerable, and intelligence and wealth do not make us immune. And financial sophistication can sometimes create overconfidence in our ability to detect fraud. And of course, right, where the money is, this we are the target, right, because of the payout. So why we fall for it? Why we fall for it every time, as Maria says, right? So they are exploiting what's called in psychology the trust shortcut. So we humans, we are wired basically to trust, and we look for indications to basically trust the other person, right? And now scammers, they build credibility by mirroring our values, our social cues, our language, right? So they exploit our desire to trust others. They exploit our susceptibility to flattery and recognition, our inherent optimism bias, and our tendency towards confirmation bias, right? So this is how Ritossa, for example, does it, right? It's a beautiful world. It's all good. We're all doing this together. And oh, I have to read from his LinkedIn. He is the chairman of the Ritossa family office. He is a family office influencer, impact investor with interests in private equity, real estate, and blockchain companies. He's a mentor, philanthropist, author, and highly sought after speaker. Look, this is all okay, but I know from two sides that the guy was actually broke, and he was so broke that a friend of mine had to lend him $10,000 because he was going through a divorce, he was out of a job, and all of that. And the academic also wrote the same thing. Now, you can start a business, and everyone should start a business, right? But don't construct a fake 600-year family office identity. Try to lure people in and present yourself as something which you are not, right? And then don't work with boiler room professionals like Norman Martin. Okay, so what next? So of course, right? Again, mirroring our beliefs, our intentions, right? Our values, and of course, right? Ritossa is citing Helen Keller. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. And of course, there are people who think he is another Steve Jobs. Okay, and this thing got 290 claps, etc. And he's reaching out lifetime achievement awards, etc. And people are humbled by it. But it's all a massive social engineering. I'm going to tell you another story now. Remember I said when this Vanity Fair article broke, a lot of people contacted me and they said, Matthias, let me tell you my Ritossa story. So a friend of mine, he runs one of the leading independent Swiss investment management companies. Okay, AUM over 1 billion. And so this guy called me. It was 8 o'clock in the evening, and I was wondering, God, what's going on? Why are you calling me that late? I have young children, right? I need to bring them to bed and whatnot. Oh yeah, no, just short, very short. Matthias, great job on the Ritossa story. Let me tell you my Ritossa story. So he said that one year he flew to Dubai because he wanted to check out one of these Ritossa events. Okay. And so there was this one sheikh who was walking around, in their traditional gear and all of that, and everybody was following this guy. Sometimes he stopped and he was handing out business cards, and everybody took it, gratefully and disappeared. And then my friend said, I want to see who this is. Okay. So he stood in line, got the business card, right? I looked at the guy and he said, Oh, I know the name. I know the company. I know the address. This is all correct. But if I look into this face, this is not the guy. This is not the guy. So you see people, and I've heard this from different sources, dressed up as someone which they aren't. They may even have put the real phone number on these printed business cards and whatnot, but it's not the guy, okay, that my friend knew, right? So here you go. Con artist's toolkit, false credentials, okay? They are using the power of the story. They're crafting narratives that align with our worldview, right? They're mirroring our values back to us, right? Making us believe they share our perspective. They leverage emotional manipulation, creating artificial scarcity or exclusivity. They use time pressure, right? Forcing quick decisions, right? Exploiting cognitive biases. So these people are really good, okay? No matter where you look, okay? And they're all around us. We have to be really, really careful. And we have to understand the anatomy of a con, okay? Because the core structure of an investment con is pretty much this, right? So there's the put up, right? You need to identify very clearly the target's desires, right? Is it wealth preservation? Is it cutting edge investment? Is it access to elite opportunities, right? What is it, right? And then you create the play. You create an environment where trust is established. You leverage personal relationships. You come up with impressive track records or industry buzz, right? Then the next thing, what happens is the rope, right? The victim is encouraged to take just a small step, making an initial investment or sharing insider access. So this is what's called the rope. And then, of course, right, this turns into a convincer. Look, it worked, right? I got my money back, or he doubled the money in 2 weeks or whatnot. And this reinforces belief in the opportunity, leading to bigger commitments. And then, of course, it all crumbles. Okay. People, is the chat working? Can you see my chat? Because I'm going to ask you now, what have these people in common? Any idea? Are you still there, people, or is it just me or Jason? What have these people in common? Any idea? Okay, we're gonna. Oh, there was a message. Sorry. Oh, rich family office. Yeah. Okay. We're getting there. Okay. Now, watch this. Watch this. I'm going to flip the slide and then you see what they have in common. Watch this. They all invested in the Theranos scam. Okay. Look at that. Did you know that Betsy DeVos had that much money? Well, I didn't. Okay. Tim Draper was very early, 2004. Okay. Jesus Christ, okay? How did this happen, right? So here you have also a prime example of a scam, right, that we're taking now as a case study built on lies, falsified data, and a product that didn't work as claimed. Okay, very interesting book, also recommended. Okay, so founded 2003 by then 19-year-old Elizabeth Holmes, a college dropout. Don't we all want to invest in these really great college dropouts, right? Like Mark Zuckerberg or Ken Griffin and whatnot. Yep, here's the opportunity, right? There's another one, 19-year-old. She raised 900 million, okay? And she claimed to have a breakthrough strategy and a technology, right, that really solved everything that's wrong with blood tests, right? It's one machine, it's called the Edison machine, and it was solving all those pain points of healthcare, right? Or the Edison device, right? Now, Theranos board. Look at these people, okay? What's missing? Actually, medical expertise. These are all great names. Henry Kissinger, right? And it's now opportunity to invest and be on the same side and be as smart as these people, right? It's just unbelievable, right? What she has created, right? This woman here, okay? Unbelievable. Okay, so what's missing? No domain expertise. And this is, listen, if you're in VC, right, you have to be aware of what's called the use and abuse of reputational capital. Okay, are all these people real that you see on those decks that are supporting this founder or this product or this company? Okay, is this all real? Okay, we have to go deeper. Right. And here, celebrated, featured, and funded. So many Forbes under 30, Crane's New York Business 40 under 40, most impressive women entrepreneurs. It doesn't help. It doesn't mean anything, right? That's not due diligence, right? So, due diligence and healthy skepticism. We can't be blinded by charisma or hype, okay? And no matter who's already in there, right, we have to do our work. We have to verify the claims independently, right? Third party verification. Okay. Now, important for our industry, alts, right? If in doubt, ask 3 non-related business professionals. And people who did that escaped Madoff. Okay. Very important. Then next, understand the technology. Really make sure you understand the technology. Somebody from your team should understand the technology. And with that, beware of secrecy, right? Oh, we can't tell you. Oh, that's an NDA. No, no, no. Patent pending. Da, da, da. No, no, no. That's not how it works. Transparency is a hallmark of a trustworthy company. And then, of course, never rely on others' due diligence, right? No matter who is on board, no matter who has invested before. And lastly, diversify risk, right? A lot of people lost a lot of money or almost all of their savings with Theranos because they thought this is just such a brilliant thing. It solves so many problems. And look who is on the board and who already has invested. Okay. I just want to mention briefly something about Jim Draper because that's really odd, really weird. Um, so he was very early, 2004. Remember, Theranos started in 2003. He put in 1 million. And what happened is Draper's daughter was a childhood friend of Elizabeth Holmes. Okay. But then when the SEC came out and started to question the Holmes story, right, he came out with public statements of support. Right? He defended Holmes. He criticized media and regulators for the handling of the situation, said Holmes was shut down because she's a threat to the system. And even after she was charged with fraud, Draper said he still believed in her vision and that she was a great entrepreneur. Right? And he added on, the scandal was a result of her being a young female founder in a male-dominated industry. I mean, that's pretty close to a conspiracy theory, right? And yeah, right. It's defending the scammer. Why do you do that, right? When there's a cognitive dissonance that you have to bridge or you have to basically deny to avoid discomfort, okay? Sunk cost fallacy, confirmation bias, ego and self-esteem, social proof and professional identity. Look, I'm one of the greatest VCs out there, right? And I want to remain one. So just trying to put it aside, emotional attachment, fear of regret. And when people ask me, why do you think people still go to these Ritossa events, right? I think it's basically the same. There's a cognitive dissonance, there's a sunk cost fallacy, etc. It's all of these things, but also hope and optimism bias, right? Well, the next event will be better. Social proof, well, look at all the names attending, it can't be bad, right? Fear of missing out. Well, I may meet one guy, right? I may meet one guy. Or in today's world, it's okay to cheat a little, which is maybe symptoms of a moral crisis. I mean, I don't know. I now want to take you to 1906. Okay, so this is a true story. This happened exactly as I am telling you now. 1906 to Berlin, or basically to a suburb of Berlin called Köpenick. And this is the story of the captain of Köpenick. True story. What you see now is from a movie they made after. So this is not the real captain, but it happened exactly like I'm going to tell you now. So this guy in the middle looks like a Prussian officer. He looks somehow respectable, except that he isn't. So this guy spent most of his life in jail, right? So he's a con artist, and he came up with a brilliant idea. So he was sewing together with pieces that he found in different tailor shops around the city of Berlin. He was basically putting together the uniform of a Prussian officer. So that's the great thing. And then he went to a barrack. And there was one guy coming out of the barrack, right? So he basically was off. It was 5 o'clock or whatever it was, right? And then the captain said in a very demanding tone, "Hey, you, come with me right now. I am on a secret mission and you have to follow me and don't ask questions. Come with me right now." Okay. And so the guy was looking at him and he looked credible and he joined him. And then there were two of these soldiers, right? And the captain was addressing the couple and told them the same story. Hey guys, we, right? He and the other guy, we are on a secret mission. You have to come with me now, right? We'll be busy for the next hour or so, but don't tell anyone, right? We'll be busy for the next hour or so. Okay, now he has three soldiers. Then there was the other troop of soldiers, same thing. You need to come with me, secret mission, just follow the others. Okay. So what did they do? They went to the treasury of the city of Köpenick, which was a suburb of Berlin, and they arrested the mayor, they arrested the treasurer, and they confiscated the treasury. So in those days, right, that wasn't the digital money. So that was real money, right? Coins and bills and whatnot. So they took the entire treasury, and the captain even gave them a receipt and said, "Now he has the order to confiscate the treasury, and I'm going to give you this receipt." Right? So he took a bag of money, told his soldiers to basically stay in line, right, and observe the situation. Don't let anyone in, don't let anyone out for the next 30 minutes, okay? And then he disappeared, went to the next train and disappeared, right? So what does this tell us, okay? So I think this story is really absurd. but it may happen all the time, right? And we have to make sure not to be that first sucker, right? So no matter what that guy in that glossy uniform or with that glossy pitch deck tells you, right? Make sure not to be that first sucker. And also the second lesson is, right, if there's a troop of suckers running around, right, you still need to do your work. You still need to look through, okay? I also want to spend some time. Who are these people? Okay. I mean, this guy is funny, right? But in the end, he was basically defrauding people throughout his life, right? And there are others, right, who do their cyber attacks on hospitals, okay, or who take money from the elderly, right, or who put up fake family offices and whatnot, and they don't stop. They don't stop. So what type of people are these? Right? There's something called the dark triad. The dark triad. So this is narcissism, this is Machiavellianism, this is about power, and psychopathy. What's psychopathy? This is lack of any emotion, right? You don't feel any pain, right? The pain of the others. But these people, they can have high levels of charisma, a grandiose sense of entitlement. Okay, I've earned this. Look, I've come so far. I've earned this. Totally manipulative and deceptive. Risk-taking. Okay. Lack of long-term planning. Well, it's just this next gig. Okay, we're gonna do that. No long-term planning. And then, of course, rationalization and justification, thrill-seeking, and total lack of accountability. Okay. And that's why we all need a secretary like Giorgio Armani. So this happened in 2005, right? Anyone know the story? In 2005, the Italian defense minister was giving three people a call. Okay, maybe it was more, but we know it was three people. It was Bertarelli, the Prada chair. It was Massimo Moratti, another Italian industrialist, former owner of Inter Milan, the soccer club, right? And Giorgio Armani. And that was the problem. Italian journalists had been abducted by terrorists in the Middle East. And the government is, of course, Italy in constant need of cash, and they really can't bring up the 5 million that's needed now until Thursday or whatever, right, to pay out. And, would he really now show his heart and contribute 1 million so that these hostages can be released, right? So interestingly, there was something really, really going on with hostages at that time. And so it was very, very well enacted. Now, Giorgio Armani's secretary said something very simple. Well, that all sounds really, really frightening, and we're absolutely always there to help. But can you just send me an email, an official email, so that I have it properly documented? And of course, this one email never came. However, Massimo Moratti, he paid 1 million euro. That was a 5-minute conversation and 1 million euro gone or won, right? If you are on the other side. Okay, so what are the lessons for family offices? So vet more than just the opportunity. We need to vet the people. Okay, we need to institute systematic due diligence protocols, right? So we need consistent verification processes, procedures for all investments. This is the key for all, everything the same, right? So, and we need to be wary of opportunity that cannot be thoroughly vetted, right? We should have cooling off periods before making major financial decisions, right? And diversify trust, right? We should avoid relying on a single advisor or a single source of information, right? We need to understand the red flags, right? We all understand them. We need to apply them, okay? And this is also important, right? We need to recognize emotional triggers because if you read that book with all the other case studies, right, why we fall for it every time from Anna, right? So know thyself. How does this make me feel? This guy, this interaction, this deal, this story, right? How does this make me feel? What's really going on? What's triggered, right? And this is really, really sensitive because we may have some intelligence within us that's trying to protect us, but we can't override it. And we need to value skepticism. So we need to surround ourselves with independent thinkers. We need to have a culture that rewards healthy skepticism, right? One idea is to have a devil's advocate when evaluating opportunities. And we need to remember that legitimate opportunities, right, they withstand scrutiny, right? We need to learn from the past. Many cons follow historical patterns, right? So I mentioned Madoff, and well, let me just see, there's something in the chat. Is there anything in the chat? Yes, yes, yes. I'll send you the deck. I'll send you the deck. Put your name in the chat. I'll send you the deck. Memory loss, right? So Madoff was 2008. So a friend of mine, he's a professor of finance in Hong Kong. And he said, hey, Matthias, I need to tell you one thing. I just couldn't believe it, right? I gave a lecture on hedge funds. Okay. And 90% of the people in the room didn't know who Madoff was. But those weren't some random walk-ins. Those were wealth advisors from banks. Okay. Uh, Shocking, right? Memory loss or poor education. And we need to stay humble and vigilant, right? We need to acknowledge no one is immune, right? Remember in that other poll, it was 40%. We need to train family office staff, family members, and regularly review risk management strategy, particularly now with all this AI, right? You can fake a voice, you can fake a video, etc. We need to be clever, right? We need to have all those preset trick questions where we assure ourselves, just as an example, that the person we're talking to is actually the person I'm assuming he or she is. Now, this is the last slide of my presentation, and this is the first known scam. Mesopotamia, 1750 before Christ, right? So fraud has been going on forever. This is basically a customer complaint letter that a guy was writing to the authorities because he got scammed in the following way. And people now, researchers assume this was what's called a long con. So there was a copper merchant, right, who was buying and selling copper bars, copper ingots, right? And this one guy was first delivering good quality, but the moment, right, he got a big order, it was all fake, okay? And this is the letter about that business gone wrong and a big complaint that the messenger of the defrauded person wasn't treated with respect and wants his money back and whatnot, right? So here you go. I'm at the end. If you have any questions, right, please put it in the chat or email me. I will send you this presentation. I'm here for you. If you have additional questions, I can also provide you this article from DN, Dagens Næringsliv, the Norwegian article I mentioned at the beginning. I'll do anything to answer your questions, right? So let me see. Okay, this is Tech. I knew this guy, met him at many conferences. Well, now you have a little bit of the background. And again, it's okay. It's okay to start a conference business, but it's not okay to do that based on a fake identity. That doesn't fly with me. and with a lot of family offices that don't touch him with a 10-foot pole. Okay, right. So, Jason, I think that's it.
It looks like we have a question
Yeah,
here.
which
It's
one?
with the younger generation glued to phone and AI giving everyone answers, do you anticipate scams becoming more common?
Sorry. Yeah, here. Due to phone AI. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Um, because you can basically set up a scam machine, right? And we have it all the time, right? With all the fake emails that we get, right? And now it's gotten as easy to do fake videos, to do fake audios, etc. So we absolutely have to step up. And if you are working in an organization, okay, no matter if it's a fund or if it's a family office, even if you're a fund, they're totally after your money. Anyone who has access to money, anyone who can underwrite a check is a target here. And we need to all come together and be a step ahead. And we really have to implement the most rigorous procedures, and we can't deviate. Okay, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, what are good family office conferences? Because many have an air of shadiness to them. Yes, very good question. Um, there are some, like the one I'm attending tomorrow, they actually verify the family office. So you just can't pretend to be a family office, right? You have to disclose certain things. And they will have a blacklist, right? Which so far is only internal, and I'm always for transparency, right? It should be external as well. So there are groups that are trying to really counteract and come up with processes of verification. Another uh, momentum that I see is that a lot of, not a lot, some family office groups start as a self-organized group. That means it's not a conference organizer, it's not for money, but it's really family offices themselves, right, who come together, maybe first small, then on a larger scale. And some of these people also produce conferences, right? So reach out to me and I can give you some details and examples. There are things um, I want to have on the public replay and some things that I'll keep private, but I'll tell you in private. Yes, get the deck, get the deck. Let me, yeah. You can also reach out to me, right? My email, let me put it in uh, knab@opalesque.com. Did we miss a question? Why are people shy to call out their thoughts? Okay. Um, because some of them may be afraid they get into legal trouble, which Ritossa even tried with me. So in 2008, right, I put out a little notice saying, look, I'm not attending, I'm not supporting, I've split my ways with this guy. He started to act weird. I looked into it. I'm not in it anymore. So I just said, I'm not supporting, not attending these conferences. And I got a cease and desist letter from a lawyer. And the funny thing was that cease and desist letter had 10 lies, 10 factual lies, and I still have it. And nothing happened because I said, well, take me on. The only thing then I said, I'm not attending, I'm not going to your conferences anymore. So he backed up very quickly. But I think that's one thing people are afraid of. Even look, there is this Ritossa book out there, right? The book, 22 pages, right? I think people should do a 0 or a 1-star review. We should warn each other, right? Um, yeah, the list of current fraudsters. Yeah, there are some initiatives. I'll email you. Yeah. Okay.
All right,
Good.
we can.
Um, Reach out to me anytime. We'll share the presentation. We had a great audience today. I'm really grateful for everyone who dialed in. I recognize some of the names, so great seeing you or seeing the name, and great to reconnect. Jason, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you at the New York Alt Roundtable webinar. It was great. Hope to be back soon, and
Of
I'll leave you to
course.
close it.
Thank you so much for this. I hope everybody enjoyed.